Sergei Rachmaninov was born into a fading Russian aristocracy. His father, a retired army officer and compulsive gambler, squandered the family's 5 sprawling estates to pay off mounting debts. By the time Sergei was a boy, the family relied on his developing talent at the piano to secure their eventual financial recovery. To ensure his success, his family sent him to live with the notoriously strict piano instructor, Nikolai Zverev. Under Zverev's roof, young Rachmaninov endured a grueling Spartan routine, forced to practice for hours on end to refine his technique and discipline. The intense pressure produced results. At just 19 years old, he graduated from the Moscow Conservatory with the Great Gold Medal, the highest possible honor, positioning him at the very top of the next generation of Russian musicians. Because his family had lost everything, Rachmaninov had no safety net. His survival and his entire sense of self-worth rested squarely on achieving immediate and flawless public success. That success was expected in St. Petersburg in 1897 at the highly anticipated premiere of his first symphony. Instead, the evening was an operational catastrophe. The orchestra was severely under-rehearsed, and the man on the podium, fellow composer Alexander Glazunov, made poor use of the little rehearsal time they had. Witnesses later suggested the conductor was intoxicated during the performance. The critical response was merciless. Prominent music critic César Cui published a review stating that if there were a conservatory in hell and a student were tasked with writing a symphony on the 7 plagues of Egypt, it would sound exactly like Rachmaninoff's work. The 24-year-old prodigy fled the concert hall in agony before the piece even finished. He fell into a severe clinical depression, suffering a creative paralysis that would last for 3 years. He took jobs giving piano lessons and conducting operas to make a living, but he stopped composing entirely. This single, catastrophic performance had effectively stalled his career and halted his creative output. Desperate to restore his voice, his family convinced him to see Dr. Nikolai Dahl, a neurologist and amateur musician. Every day for over 3 months, Dahl used hypnotherapy and autosuggestive repetition to rebuild the composer's shattered confidence. The treatment worked. By 1901, Rachmaninoff completed his Piano Concerto No. 2. He dedicated the masterpiece to Dr. Dahl, and its premiere was met with rapturous applause, securing his fame far beyond Russia's borders. This detailed map shows the sprawling layout of the Ivanovka estate, a private country retreat owned by his relatives. This isolated property became his physical sanctuary, fueling a prolific era of his career. Spending his summers far from the anxiety of the city, he absorbed the environment around him. The tranquility of the endless fields, the echoes of Orthodox chants, and the heavy tolling of local bells wove directly into his compositions. Rachmaninoff's ability to write music relied on these conditions. His output required a foundation of psychological stability and a deep geographic attachment to his native soil. That foundation was ripped away during the Russian Revolution of 1917. Communist authorities seized and looted Ivanovka, forcing the composer to gather his wife and 2 daughters and flee across the border into Finland on an open sled. By November 1918, he arrived in the United States. He had lost his estates, his frozen bank accounts, and his way of life. He was starting over in an unfamiliar, industrialized country with 500 borrowed rubles. To support his family, the 44-year-old made a harsh pivot. He largely abandoned writing new music and reinvented himself as a touring concert pianist, accepting grueling schedules across America and Europe. His success as a performer was aided by a distinct physical advantage. He possessed exceptionally large hands, capable of covering a span of 13 keys, allowing him to execute complex pieces with unique power. The tours generated immense wealth, making him one of the richest Russian émigrés in the world. But the relentless travel and a persistent homesickness silenced his compositional voice for over a decade. To secure his family's financial survival and achieve international stardom, he had to sacrifice his original work as a composer. In the early 1930s, seeking a cure for his displacement, he purchased a plot of land on the shores of Lake Lucerne in Switzerland to build a new summer home, which he named Villa Senar. The estate was designed in the stark, modernist Bauhaus architectural style, yet inside, the family maintained the customs of a traditional Russian aristocratic household, complete with Russian servants, meals, and guests. In this carefully constructed environment, his creative block finally lifted. He returned to writing, composing late works like the Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini. He proved that his genius hadn't disappeared. He could still write, provided he could manufacture the exact environmental and psychological safety of his lost past. The outbreak of the Second World War forced him to leave Europe for the last time. He relocated to Beverly Hills, California, where he passed away from melanoma in 1943, just weeks after becoming an American citizen. At the time of his death, many contemporary critics dismissed his work. They viewed his dense melodies as out of step with the experimental tones of 20th century modernism. But those critics misjudged his lasting impact. His lush, expansive orchestral style helped define the aesthetic of Golden Age Hollywood film scores, and his melodies found new life as the basis for global popular music hits. Rachmaninov translated the traumas of failure and exile into a body of work that continues to fill concert halls today. His music outlasted the collapse of his world, proving its resilience to time and changing tastes.